So Mike, buying a house with bad credit, we get these questions a lot. We get people that are tenants that are looking to buy, and they're looking at their options because maybe they went through a hardship, maybe they're self-employed. There's all kinds of variables out there. But I wanted to start off and I think, kind of go through some of the obvious ways someone with bad credit could buy a house. And I think the first one is saving a larger down payment.
Right, absolutely. There's a lot of lenders out there that lend solely off a credit score, but there's also some other places that may offer a little bit more flexibility. I tell a lot of people, and this takes business from me, if it's something I can't do right away, but there's a scenario right now actually with one of the agents in your office. There was a client who had, I believe, 30 or 40% to put down, but they had a short sale within the last year, which is something that my company can't do. However, I suggested that they call a credit union, because a lot of times a credit union will do everything in-house. They assume all the risk.
And they're loaning their own money.
Right, they're loaning their own money, so they're willing to take a little bit more risk with someone that has
And generally, you're probably
paying
paying a little bit more in rate.
Right.
You may pay a little bit more in costs. But if you're dead set on owning a home now, that's an option that's available. I think, the obvious one that I thought was surprising, when I looked at, there was an article that kind of prompted me to bring this up about 4 ways to buy a house with bad credit. One of the options that they left out is, how about you improve your credit?
Right, exactly.
There's a lot of ways that consumers, don't know how to evaluate their score, what the contributing factors are, and how to get that credit score up.
Right, and some of the easiest ways to get your credit scores up quick is paying down the balances on your revolving debts, your credit cards. Anytime your credit cards are more than 50% of the limit, it'll start dragging your scores down. So I have a scenario right now with a client I'm working on that their scores were 1 point too low, but they can pay down one credit card $300, and there's the potential for their score to go up 20 points.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people have old collections or certain things, and they sometimes get bad advice from, oh, I need to pay that off, and sometimes that's not always the right move, and I think that's why, if your credit score is low, if you check it yourself and it is too low, you definitely want to talk to someone about it, and I would say to call you and talk to you about it and have you look at it, because there could be simple things that they can do, or they may not quite have a good grasp of how credit scores are calculated and may make a mistake that ends up costing them the ability to buy, because they thought logically I should pay this off, when that's not always the case.
And one thing I want to point out too, a lot of people look at their scores on the online scores, Credit Karma, places like that. They use a different scoring model than we do in the mortgage world. They use a consumer score, totally different model. We use FICO, so just because your scores may say one thing on one service doesn't mean it's going to be the same.
Correct, because there's different credit bureaus, so they all see things a little bit different. I know, the revolving debt one is an interesting one that I know is completely true. My wife and I are blessed to not have, a lot of consumer debt. But we have a business credit card that we use use our expenses like our bills to 970 WFLA and iHeart, and so but we pay it in full every single month. We obviously want the points and some of the perks that come along with that. But if I check my score before I've paid off my credit score from month to month it wavers a big number, because of whether or not that card is paid in full or not, or if it's got a higher balance.
Exactly.
And it goes over that 50% number.
Right.
So when I check it and I've not paid the balance off, or the balance hasn't reported paid yet,
right.
my credit score is low. If I check it right after it's paid and it's been reported, then my credit score is really high. So it's every month. I mean, if I, and I follow the little Credit Karma thing, so I look at it, and I mean, my credit score is like a roller coaster.
Right, and that's the thing too with creditors. When you pay off a credit card or a debt or pay it down, they don't report immediately when you make the payment. They report at different times during the month. So like your instance where you pay it off each month, but when they report if it has a balance, that's what you're saying.
Like I might check it 5 days after I paid it off and it hasn't showed credited yet, and my score still shows low. I mean, we're not out applying for mortgages or anything, so it's not. It doesn't really matter to me. I keep an eye on it more from an identity theft, standpoint. But another option, going with an FHA loan, lower credit score,
qualification. A lot of companies, including ours, Atlantic Bay, will go down to 580 with FHA loans. There are some companies that will even go as low as 540 on FHA loans. That gets into a larger down payment. But with us, can go as low as 580. But we're going to scrutinize the file a little more. We're going to want to see that you've had a housing payment, rent in the last 12 months, and that you have a little bit of money saved up in reserves as well. So it is possible.
And one of the other points is knowing what to emphasize to a lender. When I read it, looking through the things, I think a good lender is probably going to get this out of the customer. But at the same time, depending on what kind of lender you're working with, if you're working with a good one or not a good one, one thing I think is important is sometimes people will see that you're a salesperson, but maybe you're not commission based, or maybe it's only a bonus, maybe you're mostly salary. So making sure to point those things out about your tax returns, I think, is an important thing too, because of how your income qualifies.
Absolutely.
The other, trying a private mortgage, I think is something that can happen if you're someone in one of those unique situations where your score isn't good enough, you can't get money from a financial institution. There are private mortgages available. There are people that will loan you the money for a certain rate. Generally, you're going to pay a little bit more on rate and cost because that person could just go buy a bond or put their money in a mutual fund, so they're going to want to make a little bit more on their money. But those are viable options as well.
Right. And there's nothing that says you can't refinance out of that once you get in a position to do it on your own.
Yeah, no question. So again, kind of to summarize, trying a private mortgage, knowing what to emphasize to a lender, looking at an FHA loan, saving for a larger down payment, and then the obvious one, which is work on, improving your credit score, which again, I think is not as complicated as people sometimes think. Their score could only be off 10 or 15 points.
Exactly.
And I think all of these things are important too, even if you don't have bad credit, because even if you've got pretty good credit, but you do have, like in my situation, maybe you have one big bill every month on a credit card or something like that, when it reports paid, the score is going to look better. So it's also about being able to know when to pull the score, and the volatility of those scores and the differences of how they are calculated is a huge factor in knowing that and understanding that. And you don't need to be a credit expert. I mean, if you call Mike at Atlantic Bay Mortgage, he's going to set you straight. I can't say the same for everything else, but you at least need to be cognizant of some tweaks that you might have to make in order to qualify and be able to buy a home. We're going to continue this conversation. We're also going to talk about our first-time homebuyer seminars. We just had our first one. We started them in March. We're going to do them every month. I believe it's the first Thursday of every month.
Right.
So if you know someone that's a first-time homebuyer or considering buying their first home, we do them the first Thursday of every month at our office at 6320 South Del Mabry. We'll talk a little bit more about that and much more about Tampa real estate after a quick break here on 970 WFLA.